Hello. So glad you're all here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
So it looks like we have a quorum and it's 5 o'clock. I don't know how many of
Is
you.
my sound working?
Yes,
Yes, it is.
thank you, Mac. So
Rebecca, do you want to have Rebecca just give me the hosting duties and then she can sign off?
that would be great. Is that okay,
I can
Rebecca?
do that.
Thank
Sure,
you.
hang on one second.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, you're all set. Have a good meeting.
Thanks,
Thanks a
Rebecca.
lot, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Hi, Tim.
So, hi, Tim. So Gordon isn't going to be able to be with us again tonight. He's expecting to be with us for our next meeting and he's doing better. He actually went to work today, but was told to limit it to 2 hours. So little by little. And can I just have a show of hands about who got my email that was sent this afternoon? Okay. So Mac, you didn't, is that right? Oh, do you hear me, Mac? It looks like Mac's having trouble. Oh, you're on mute. Can you hear me now? Oh, I guess he's trying again. All right. All right, so I guess I'll just start with the basic parameters, which is that we agreed that this extra meeting would just be about proposals. And so I'm assuming that we aren't going to cover any other business, but we can talk about that, about whether we want to take a little bit of time, at least to discuss the email that I sent to you.
Well, I think we should discuss it in that I'm assuming that Jim knows about this, so he would know to go ahead and give people building permits without having to go in front of us unless it involved demolition, right?
Oh, Jim Badera.
Jim? Yeah. So that he.
Well, I sent him an email. I haven't heard back from him. And I sent an email as well to Doreen, who's the secretary there, who is kind of the gatekeeper.
Right.
So I guess we'll just go ahead without Mac because it's 5 and we should start. So basically what happened was because we've had these 3 applications for vinyl windows, I decided that I was going to try to get more information about how we should be handling these. And so I called. Hi, Mac, glad you're back. Can you hear me?
Is my sound working now?
Yes.
It is.
And can you hear me? Do you hear me, Mac? Looks like not, maybe.
No.
Oh, dear.
Matt, can you hear us? Any of us? I don't
Never.
think he is. Can you hear us?
Yes,
Oh, good. All right, good.
finally. Sorry.
It's all right. So Mac, I'm talking about an email that I sent to everybody this afternoon. Did you?
I saw it. Yeah.
Oh, good. You guys are terrific. You're also on top of things. Thank you. So, and Luke, my apologies to you about this, but of course you and I have been on the commission the longest of everybody who's on the commission now, and we were all under the same impression that window replacements were under our purview.
Yeah, well, even prior to being on the commission, I mean, I went for, I don't know, 20 years having to get approval. So, you know, it seems like,
Wow, it's a long precedent.
Are we sure we want to not get more opinions about this before we decide permanently that we're not going to do that? I mean, I don't know who else we would get opinions from, but it seems kind of sudden that, and that feedback is very.
Maybe we should. This person is, she is the local government programs coordinator at Mass Historical Commission. She is the person that does all of the trainings for historical commissions in the state. So I assume she knows what she's talking about, but there's no harm in asking for a second or even a third opinion, given that there's a long precedent.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'd assume that she probably knows what she's talking about too. I just think it's it seems kind of crazy that we've been doing this for so long, and I don't, and people have spent money that they probably didn't have to spend, and people have had plans redesigned and gone to multiple meetings and taken up hours of their day that they might not have had to, and it seems a little nutty altogether, but
Yeah,
I mean, I was talking to Mayor earlier and I was saying, but how do we, I mean, there is the establishment of historical commission, meaning that the town wants to preserve the historical nature of the town, of the architecture in the town.
mhm,
And that we follow the guidelines established by the Secretary of the Interior, or we try to.
mhm.
We urge people with historic homes to do so. So it just seems very suddenly that the only thing we would look at would be things that involved 50% or more of a building demolition. That doesn't make sense to me. That's all.
Exactly.
Yeah, so.
I'm
what-
also, sorry to jump in, but I'm also confused. Are we the only town?
No. What she's saying is that there are some other towns that do it the way we do, but that the Mass Historic Commission doesn't recommend that we do it this way because we don't have any legal backing. That the only legal backing we have is our demolition delay bylaw. So we should only be hearing properties that have to do with that. And then she's saying that some towns define what partial demolition means. We don't have a definition on the books. So that gives us a little bit of latitude. And I think that's probably why the Historical Commission has been able to do it this way in the past. But she's saying, this is kind of what Luke's point has been for years, actually, about okay, so if people go ahead, for example, in this case, if these people had gone ahead and replaced the 18 vinyl wooden windows with vinyl windows, what's our recourse? And we couldn't impose a demolition delay bylaw for something like that. So we don't have anything to stand on if somebody goes against our advice. We can be advisory, but we don't have any jurisdiction.
Well,
Unless we had a local historic district.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's, I actually I was just going through emails to find out what Jennifer Dougherty's title was and found the attachments that I received from the training I went to about local historic districts. So I just sent all of you the documentation on that, because it does seem like if we go with this opinion, then that's our next step, is if we choose to take it on, is to see if we can establish some local historic district. And that's what she was recommending, is that that we do that if we want to protect certain sections of town or certain buildings in town. You can even name an individual building a local historic district. But of course, it needs to be passed by town meeting, and there hasn't been support for this in the past.
well, as strange as this all sounds, maybe it's a way that finally, if the commission that we have now is basically dismantled, maybe that would persuade some people to recognize that it would be useful to vote in favor of having us have a little more power. It seems kind of crazy that Wellfleet wouldn't have any sort of safeguard in place for any construction other than demolition. But and we probably wouldn't have to meet very often, maybe once or twice a year. Who knows?
Right, exactly.
but it also sounds like we can define what partial demolition is ourselves, since it's not defined. I mean, I do think that at the very least we can serve in an advisory capacity to people who own historic homes. I just hate to see us say, well, we're going to dismantle the commission. This all seems very sudden to me. And I think we need to spend some more time talking to people and looking at other towns and seeing what they've done. Because all the other towns, with the exception of local historic districts and historic preservation restrictions, don't they have the same kind of bylaws we do. So I think this warrants some further exploration before we start making some decisions about how we're going to move forward.
We also have $4,000 set aside in our CPA grant for workshops and training. So there is the potential there to inform the public about the advantages of a local historic district.
That's true. That's a really good point, Jim. Yeah.
So I'm going to the thing that Meryl sent around, which was about a workshop about establishing local historic districts. I guess this is Mass Historical Society.
Yeah.
I can't remember who put that on. I think it's in November and it's online.
It's
And
Mass Historical Commission. Yeah. go ahead.
commission, maybe we should all attend and really have some information about what it would take for us to protect some of these buildings further, giving us some skin in the game, in essence, something to go back on if we deny a application, for instance. I don't know, this just seems very sudden to me. I think we need to spend some time looking into it more.
It's definitely sudden. There's no question.
Yeah.
I wonder, I don't want to, it's funny, when I got your email, my first response was, then what are we doing? And I feel like what we're doing is important. And like, Luke, you're way more involved in the construction trade than I am, but even some contractors who might be inconvenienced by this agree with what we do, because we're trying to preserve how the town looks. I mean, it's a pain in the ass. Like, I had to do the same thing. Sorry to use bad language, but it's a pain in the neck to, like, I went with my own house. Like, we paid more for the nice windows. I spent my time to do the drafting. Like, people are going to be upset about that. And that's, and we went through these hoops. We go through these hoops in order to do this. But there's a reason we do it. And we do it because we want to keep the town as it is. And
Yeah.
I think that it's sort of like we talk about a lot with like Yelp, where people, like, you only hear from the people who are against something, like they had a bad meal, so they're going to go on Yelp and complain about it. And I'm wondering if that's the feedback that we're receiving when we have these meetings, or we go in front of the town, and it's the people who are there are going to be upset about it. If we, maybe what Jim's talking about as far as like raising awareness, if we can get more people behind saying, hey, we actually do want the town to stay as it is, or to have more teeth, and try to write in what demolition means, even if it means, removing trim, like, is that demolition? Removing windows can be defined as demolition, but like, it worries me that, I'm worried twofold. One, that, this sudden change is going to make a lot of people very upset. And of Luke's been coming here for 20 years. I'm sure there's a lot of time in your life that, Luke, that you've spent coming before this commission that you're like, well, if I didn't need to, that's a lot of waste of my time, and time is money. But on the other hand, I think that there will be more people in this town, if they're aware of it, who would be on our side, and want the town to remain the scale and the things that we talk about.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think those are all things we need to think about. I just think that, I think that, I would urge us to reach out to other towns, to talk to the Mass Historical Commission again, to talk to just kind of, so we don't have the ability to stop something permanently. Well, we don't have the ability, even with a demolition delay, to do that for more than 2 years. So, even if we're just advisory, but people still need to get sign off from us, or the building inspector is going to, potentially hold back, giving people a permit. I think we need to think about the advisory role that we have. Maybe we change the way that we interact with the public when they come to us, but I would hate to see us just kind of disband and just, only come together when there's like somebody's going to knock down half of a house or more. I just think that I don't think that that's what the town meant to do when they established the Historical Commission.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think so either. I do think it's a good idea for us to look into what other towns are doing. I've had on my list to call Provincetown, because they are the one town on the Outer Cape that does have a local historic district. I contacted their historical commission to find out about the historic buildings that they've approved that use those Anderson by renewal windows. and heard from them that they don't have anything to do with windows. The local historic district deals with windows. So already it's a difference, and it's something to learn about how it works there. But I haven't, it's so interesting. They don't have any way to contact their either group on their website. So you have to call town hall and get phone numbers if they'll give them to you. So
Provincetown's, the meetings that I've been to are much more formal, but they also, for like roofing and siding, they have an administrative review where they just kind of get back to you and tell you that you're able to proceed without going to the main meeting that's held. And so, there's some things that seem a little more laid back than, where we have everybody coming in front of us for, taking off a cedar roof and changing it to asphalt or whatever. There's some things that fall under their administrative review that are pretty quick and easy. But other things they're pretty tight on. I mean, I've had the building inspector tell me that we couldn't proceed with any AZAC decking in the historic district. And yet you see it up and down the street. People are either sneaking it in or, I don't know what everybody does, but there are some differences. But I think the main difference is, maybe it's time for us to figure out how to proceed with having some sort of formal vote inside the town to see if we're going to have more teeth or not, because I think it's a good time to sort everything out, one way or the other. It seems like the writing's on the wall.
yeah, I agree. The design guidelines that Jim and Gordon and I developed were developed kind of on a trial basis to see what it would be like to try to use them to be more consistent. But we did them with the understanding that those are usually done just for local historic districts. And so in a way, we have a bit of a head start potentially, because we started at least thinking about what our guidelines might be for establishing a local historic district. And I think the difference is that we wouldn't be able to protect all of the buildings in town the way we thought we were. We'd have to decide on certain areas. And obviously, we could use maybe the NRHP districts as a guideline. Those are honorary designations. They aren't legal. But, because those have been researched by preservation specialists, we have ground to stand on. And the other thing that's interesting to me about the local historic districts is, even if a building is in what they call an LHD, if the only part that we have jurisdiction over would be what's you can view from the street. So for example, 95 Aunt Sarah's Way, you can't see from the street, so it wouldn't even qualify. And that's true for that building that we were talking about that's next to Outer Cape Health Center on Route 9 as well. I mean, in some ways, I think it could help us, because then it's so clear what we have jurisdiction over and what we don't. And we don't have to get into all these tussles, because now I have Darlene at the building department constantly questioning what we're doing. And it's just a headache, frankly.
Imagine.
So I guess we need to really figure out what protections a local historic district gives the town or the buildings within that district. And if it's just the part that faces the road or that's visible, that's one thing. But then do you follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for those, and then the rest can be whatever they want? I guess that's what you're suggesting.
I think the way it works is that you develop your design guidelines, and they're very specific, and you can look up all the design guidelines of all the towns in Massachusetts, which is what Jim did as we started this process of developing ours. But those are ostensibly based on the Secretary of Interior guidelines. They're just much more specific. And then people are required to go by those guidelines, and we have them to go by as we make our decisions. It also, I think it means that they can't demolish the building unless it's a really unusual circumstance. At least, Luke, you may know more about this because they have it in P-Town. Do you have a sense from your dealings with them?
For as far as the demolition delay?
Yeah.
I've never fully taken down a building in Provincetown, or at least in the historic district. So I'm not super familiar with that. I know that that years ago, one company put up scaffolding all around a house on Commercial Street and tarped it off so you couldn't see it. And they took it down in a day and they just said, well, we'll take the fines or whatever. But
Mhm.
that's really the only full demolition that I can even really think of happening in downtown.
Mhm.
So no, I'm not super familiar with what you'd have to go through for a full demolition.
Okay, so it's, the workshop was useful, but it's not very detailed and you can't ask a lot of questions because there are a lot of people there. So,
Right.
but we could actually, this woman did say to me that she would be willing to come and talk to us at a meeting.
I think that would be great.
I think that'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think we all agree, I mean, we don't want to be onerous about the protections we're trying to give these structures.
Yeah.
To the homeowners and to the building owners, but we do want to maintain the historic nature of the town, which is why the historic commission exists. And so there have to be some teeth, there have to be some means for us to protect those buildings or aspects of those buildings so that that's what happens, that we are able to protect the historic nature of the town.
Yeah, I
You know,
agree.
however we have to do that, we'll have to figure that out.
Yeah.
I just read through the city of Salem's design guidelines, which are extraordinarily wonderful. And I'd be happy to send those to you, but I mean, that's obviously a city with a different kind of built environment, but you know, I think having somebody come talk to us so we can figure out what the heck we should do, I think would
Mhm.
make sense. That
I feel like the cat's kind of out of the bag a little bit, so to speak. You know, people have come in front of us for a long time and we've been in an advisory position, but you know, years ago, they said a permit wouldn't be issued unless we voted in favor of something. And then it turned into, we're looking at things case by case and permits are still going to be issued. And we have this advisory role. And it just seems like the way things have progressed, it should be kind of black and white laid out as excuse me, are people required to come in front of us to receive our advice and take it into consideration and proceed with the permitting process as they wish, and then maybe get hung up with other zoning things or setbacks or, you know, other bylaws and whatever, but or if we're going to enforce any kind of opinions or guidelines, you know, they need to be clear cut, and then we need to establish, you know, legally and technically and with the town, that's the way it is, which, and the terminology is escaping me. We'd have to have a registered historic district
It's a local historic district.
with the
That's what it's
state,
called.
and that would
Um,
have to be voted on in a town meeting.
Yep.
And that's what the hangup's been so far, because people don't want to have more government and more regulations and not do with their property what they see fit, which is understandable to some degree, but people also want to protect the town.
Mhm. I think
So
it-
I mean, to me, I'm sorry, Meryl, I didn't mean to cut you off,
Finish.
but no, I mean, to me, it just seems like a crossroads, and we need to, you know, all the talk about establishing guidelines and you know, I think it's important, but I don't think if we can't impose anything, I think that the time that we spend and the efforts that we spend should be directed now towards how are we going to proceed with making this, you know, a real enforceable set of guidelines, or if not, do we move forward as strictly advisory and everybody comes into the meeting knowing that that's what we're here for?
Yeah, nothing that says it. That's where we are.
Exactly.
Well, it seems like, so I guess the plan of action at this point is to get a second and maybe a third opinion about what this woman is saying. Ask her to come and speak with us in a meeting if it turns out that this really is the way we need to go. And then if we end up deciding that we need to go by this and we'll just be meeting for things that might involve some kind of demolition, I guess then we could think about whether we want to specify what partial demolition means and work on a definition of that. And we can certainly work on doing more educating of the public and really, go whole hog on workshops. And I think there's a lot of good work we can do in that arena. We're talking about, I did put in a note to Sarah Korcheff about coming and speaking about the FEMA guidelines in historic buildings, and Jim's talking about, I'm sorry, what was your idea just then, Jim, about a workshop?
Well, a workshop or training on the advantages of a local
Oh, that's
historic district. And
Yeah.
I might add, this is jumping ahead a bit, but I think the person you spoke to is probably Jennifer Dougherty at the
yes.
Massachusetts Historical Commission. Her predecessor, whose name escapes me at the moment.
Chris
is
Skelly.
Yes, he's now a consultant in private practice. So he has a lot of experience in this area. So he is somebody, I think that potentially we could call upon. And again, there's to be funding within that line item to help there.
That's a good idea.
He's pretty, he has guided communities in establishing these districts.
Yeah, that's
Pretty
great.
savvy. He's pretty savvy about what you have to do.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So yeah, I don't think we need to disband in any case. I think there's still work that we can do to educate the public about the value of preservation. And I guess let's see, I would just want to be sure I communicate to you everything that she said. She also said that we can't delay contractors without a legal basis to do so, because it puts the town at risk of being sued anytime we delay a
That
project.
makes sense. Mhm.
And one of the big deals that's happening with the building department, one of the reasons we're having to meet twice a month, is that Jim Badera is really under the gun from the state to move things along more quickly because things have been delayed. So I think that's partly why we weren't supported in the situation at Squires Pond Lane about the demolition. It's also because he was a contractor and claimed that it wasn't a structurally viable building. And even though he originally said he could work it out with the historic portion, they didn't have much ground to stand on because he's a licensed engineer.
That all makes sense and is true, but permits haven't not been issued because of us or our time frame or our meeting schedule. It's a lot deeper than that. It's been the turnover and building inspectors and paperwork piling up, and it really it's falling back on us as secondary. It's not due to us.
Yeah, I think it's more that Jim said because of all of that, he can't, he said he's not allowed anymore to delay, to say you have to wait for historic for a month, because he's got to get decisions made within a month, and that's why we're meeting every 2 weeks. So, well, not every 2 weeks, twice a month.
Right.
Well, I just want to jump in here. I mean, I think these are all valid things. I think for September 7th, I think we should still meet and maybe focus on having some time to digest this, since this came this afternoon and now we're meeting 2 hours later.
Yeah.
But I think that you're right in that we should take whatever the building department's going to give to us. And I've made this point before that I don't think that we should stop what we're doing, even if it's as an advisory role. I've made this point before, but if let's say somebody comes to us and they want to knock down the building where the Fox and the Crow used to be, and we say we'd really not like that, and then a month later they knock it down and the town is like, how did this happen? And our advisory role was still there saying, we really don't agree with this. I still think if we do the good work and what we're trying to do here and preserve the town, it speaks for itself. And I don't want to say it protects us, but it shows that we're still trying to do what we can with what we have. And I'm sure that a lot less will be referred to us. But as far as September 7th is concerned, I think we should all take time to figure out what the solution is in our own capacity. And Meryl, I know you have a lot on your plate and you're doing a lot. So please send us tasks. You know, if we need to connect with other towns or do more research, please hand that out. I'm happy to work towards that.
Thank you, Tim. I would love it actually. If anybody wants to take a town that you're willing to research, that would be great. I'd be happy to take P-Town because I've sort of started that process, but
I think my concern, I would really like to talk to a town that has a similar concerns to ours, which is that we don't have the support of the town. And I don't know if that's true or not. We might not have support of the selectmen or the select board. Maybe that's the issue, but I'd like to talk to somebody about how they kind of overcame that or are trying to overcome town opinion about what a local historic district actually will do.
I'm interested in Sandwich. Sandwich has a lot of historic stock, and I'm happy to reach out to whoever to find out how they went about it and what they've done there and what the situation is, because I just drove down 6A today and every house there is
So beautiful, yeah.
stuff, and want to know how they've managed that. And
I'll talk to Chatham because I think Chatham has not done a very good job
Yeah.
of protecting. Sorry,
you're being recorded, Susan.
Sorry.
and your
Protecting some of their assets, their historic assets. So I will, I'll reach out to them and do a little research into their issues that they face.
Thank you. And you've already done some research into Salem.
See, I have the design guidelines for Salem. I mean, there are 4 historic districts here, plus national historic districts, plus, I mean, it's very well protected. And everybody lives here is very supportive of that. So that's really not an issue. And they have pretty strict guidelines.
So I'd love it if you do research into how they got to this place.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk. I mean, I'll just talk to the preservation planner.
That'd be wonderful. Okay. Anybody else want to take a town? Not required. Okay.
I don't really know what Truro has going on, honestly. I mean, I have a pretty good working relationship with Richard Stevens, who I could talk to. I'm trying to recall if I've really ever had an issue with going in front of any kind of historic commission or anything in Truro. It seems odd that I can't recall ever running into it, but I'll check with Truro and just see what they do, because
Thank you. That would be great, because they do have some beautiful historic houses there that look preserved, but it may just be the people who own them.
I know
yeah,
that
it's hard to say.
there was that big brouhaha about the Hopper House and not blocking the
Yeah.
view of the McMansion. So I think there is an active group that I don't know who it is that's trying to keep the landscape in the building.
Brouhaha got nowhere, didn't it?
And I don't think it got them very far now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and so I'll talk to Salem and I'll look into Chatham. And it would be really great if you could invite this woman to come talk to our meeting at the next meeting, because I think we need to move fairly quickly on this, because I
Yeah.
think we need clarity for ourselves about how we're supposed to go ahead and act as a commission at this point. So,
we're certainly going to have the time.
yeah.
True.
Point.
Well, we could, although, we could put a lot of effort into doing some terrific workshops and get support from the town for developing local historic districts over time. One of the things she said is that sometimes it actually really benefits people when they step back a bit, because then the town is less resentful. And one thing about the LHDs are they limit our purview. And so people will feel less encroached upon if we have certain areas and certain buildings that are covered, and then other buildings, people can do what they choose. It kind of breaks my heart because I love the historic character of the town altogether, but
I don't really know who resents the commission. it's kind of mysterious to me. I mean, we probably didn't get the vote to have a district at some point, which I don't even really know when that was, honestly. But I don't know if it's coming more from contractors who are trying to get a permit issued without a speed bump, or if it's inside the town or what. But it would be interesting to know what the obstacles are, and if they're, how to go about getting on a agenda to have a vote made one way or the other. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
see why we'd kill too much time. Just figure out what we have to do, and if it's shot down, fine, and if it isn't, great. But at least having some sort of clear idea of where we're going here.
Well,
Well,
maybe we,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, maybe we research what demolition, the definition of demolition is, and how we get that into writing.
You get that, that's on a lot of the other historical commission towns' websites, because that's pretty much the meat on the bones in terms of any kind of power that historical commissions have. So when Jim did that review, when I read through a lot of those, there's a lot of demolition delay and there's also partial demolition delay definitions that might be helpful for us to kind of gather those together. The other thing I think we should do is, as we kind of get our minds wrapped around a local historic district and what that would take and where we'd want those to be, we can also poll as part of kind of the educational portion of this. Is we could have some workshops, and then we could poll the town, the voters in the town, and say, this is something we're trying to do. What are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you not agree? We can do a little survey, because
Yeah.
if it's everyone's opposed to it, it doesn't make sense for us to try and move forward at this point unless we can figure out a different way to do it.
Well, and having people understand that it's not going to affect everybody in town. I think
Right.
most of the people who are, I'd be inclined to think that a majority of the people who have a downtown district property are, for the most part, willing to preserve it. And
Yeah.
I don't see too many people objecting to having to go in front of a commission, but I might be wrong. It would be interesting to know anyway. But I think that probably the fear of a lot of people in town is that we're just going to squash anything that they want to do,
Right.
whether it's a house in the woods that nobody ever sees or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Well, just as an aside, the building inventory work, Form Bs, is ongoing. And
Right.
that
That's
provides a substantial basis for decision-making about configuring an local historic district. So
That's absolutely right.
it's important that be continuing, which it is.
Right. Yeah. And I think, in fact, when I just read through a lot of those Form Bs, there are certain parts of town I didn't really realize that as much kind of historic inventory as they do. So I think that's going to be really helpful for us in terms of figuring out where we want to try and do this.
We could even get input from Lynn Smilage, the preservation specialist, about what she would recommend.
Yes.
And she, as you know, she's terrific.
The business of being out of sight concerns me. A lot of most of the mid-century modern places, which are treasures,
Yes,
are out of sight.
that's a really good point, Mac. Yeah.
Some of those are protected by the seashore, aren't they? Or are they not?
Somewhat.
By the Cape Cod Modern
Somewhat,
House Trust,
yeah.
but not all of them, obviously. And I think a perfect example of what can happen when there's no controls is looking at the colony and what's happened there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the scale of that building that's being built.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And the other thing we could try to work on are things like preservation easements, because ideally that would have been done with the colony. I mean, already there's so many changes happening there.
Yeah, I think it's almost too late, almost.
But yeah. So in terms of the process for developing an LHD, I've done a number of trainings through the Mass Historic Commission, and my understanding is that they recommend doing a lot of public education first. And we could even do something like a community forum to get feedback from people as well as
Yeah.
and we could do more educational things. And then we'd have to develop a warrant that would go before a town meeting, and the town meeting, there's a town meeting happening very soon. So that wouldn't be for several months. So we would have time, but we just, we could really devote our efforts more to educating the public now rather than having meetings if we change things around enough. And it would give us more time and energy to work this up. But we'll see.
Do you think this makes sense to run by any of the selectmen? Or do you
Oh,
think?
that's the other issue, do you all know this, that Rebecca Eldridge, we mentioned this in the last meeting, that Rebecca Eldridge said the select board is interested in having a liaison to various committees and commissions and wanted to know who was interested. And I did give her our feedback that we would be interested in somebody who supports our mission of protecting and preserving historic buildings in Wellfleet.
Very nicely said, I'm sure.
I like that phrasing.
And I also said, since we've never done this before, could we maybe think about a 6-month trial to see if it's a good fit on both ends?
Yeah.
So far, I'm not sure who on the select board supports our work, but I'm not sure that we aren't supported either.
Right.
It's just not clear. And I think the thing with Squires Pond Lane, I'm not sure that was the town not supporting us. I think it was a combination of the town being in financial arrears, being afraid of a lawsuit, and not feeling they had any ground to stand on because of the structural issues.
And to speak on that, I live in that neighborhood. I live off School Street, and I have a number of people I know on School Street who have asked me, what the bleep happened with that and why is that going forward? So I think that speaks to sort of the interest. I was just thinking of School Street itself, which is sort of an extension of the historic district. And I was like totting up in my head. I'm like, I think pretty much everyone I know along that road would want to be part of a historic district and would be in support of it. So I think that we probably have more support than we might be assuming. But I think, I think that polling and finding out more about that might be an interesting aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, like Max saying, the houses in the woods that are significant in design and age, of course, we'd all be interested in preserving everything that we deem significant. But I'm wondering if, trying to take I'm afraid that if we're too broad, we could lose enough support and end up strictly being an advisory committee that people are going to not really take into consideration, possibly. Whereas if we focus on securing the downtown area as our primary focus, trying to figure out how to get a district and make it something that would have to come in front of us for clear decisions to be made, maybe we would see more support than targeting the whole town, basically, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing that would be great is if we are able to install a local historic district in the downtown area. I would think other neighborhoods who have historic buildings might want to, let's say, for instance, I'm not suggesting this because I think School Street should be part of that district, but let's say School Street wasn't, and you guys banded together and said, we want to be included in the local historic district. They can be expanded, they can be changed. So I think, and like I said, Salem has 5 or 6 spread around the city. So, different neighborhoods can be added over time.
And I think that the idea that when you have an old home, you are not the homeowner, you're the caretaker to pass it along is a pretty prevalent thought. And that a lot of people, if you approach them who have older homes, might say, I would really like to have my house be preserved and be part of this district for the future. And garnering that support might be a way to go about it as well.
I think the main thing that I can think of that might cause people to not want to support this is worrying about their resale value. You know, that would they have fewer buyers if there were limitations to what people could do with the house? And of course, that is part of what we're trying to impose, is for people to have some limitations.
But they're just exterior minor, facing I mean, I
True,
think people-
facing the street, yeah.
people buy houses because they look that way. I mean, my house is worth a ridiculous amount of money right now. For no, because it's downtown. Seriously,
Right.
it looks old.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think that's historically had an impact in Wellfleet, certainly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but I think you're right, Mac, that the Modern House Trust houses wouldn't be protected by the local historic district. And I think that's must be partly why Peter McMahon created the Modern House Trust.
Yeah, sure.
But that it's probably the only way, because the legal setup in Massachusetts doesn't seem to allow. But that would be another thing to ask her about. Ask
Yeah,
Jennifer.
that would. I mean, I think that would be interesting, because all that stuff that's in the seashore and that's in that trust, because not everything is, maybe that makes sense for us to consider.
The Modern House Trust didn't help the colony.
No, they didn't. No.
Well, he tried.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, he came to all the historical commission meetings that were about those properties, but yeah. It's partly trying to find viable compromises with homeowners so we don't have to get into demolition delays.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to add?
Well, I just sent a whole bunch of letters to people, new homeowners, telling them they had to come before us. So we'll still be getting applications, I'm sure.
Well, at least they'll know we're available for, well, and you were talking about maybe changing that letter and making it.
Yeah, I'll say we're, we can take that up at another time, but we'll definitely have to reword all that stuff. We'll have to reword the way that we communicate to the public.
Yeah, and we might want to say something about how we're available in an advisory capacity to help you with resources about renovations you might want to make.
Right. And here are the Secretary of the Interior standards, and you should review, these would be helpful for you. And
Yeah.
blah, blah. Yeah, we can figure that out.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
easy, but-
All right. Well, thank you all. This has been a really productive conversation. And I hope we don't get to a point where we meet way less. It might be nice to meet a bit less. Maybe someday we can meet in person. Who knows?
That would be fun too. I love
Yeah.
going to in-person meetings now. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll, let's see what we can pull together for the next meeting and just kind of move forward.
Great. Yeah. So if all of those of us who are doing research into towns check out the demolition delay bylaws of those towns, that would be really helpful in addition to whatever else we're going to do.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say I'm going to do that. I'll try to, if I have time, I'll try to look into partial demolition delay definitions that I saw in the other.
Great. Yeah.
I'm super busy coming up, so I'm going to do my best, but I have no guarantees that I'll get to that before our next meeting in 2 weeks.
That's fine. Yeah. All right. Great. Well, I think we can adjourn the meeting, and I'll look forward to seeing all of you.
We need to approve. Oh no, we're going to do that at the next meeting. We're not doing any of the business stuff like approving the minutes or anything like that.
I guess not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll wait until that meeting, and I'll see you all in September.
Very nice.
Thank
Lovely last 2 weeks.
Thank
of
Thank
August.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.